Welcome to Papa's Bedtime Tales. I am your guide, Papa Ben. I invite you to a place where time stands still and magic and heroes come to life. Close your eyes and step into the tales. Today's story is the Odyssey. Now, let us leave this world behind. When I count to 3, you will drift deep into the world of tales. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. Swish, swish. And just like that, we are here. The sound of waves gently lapping against the hull of a wooden ship. The smell of salt is in the air, and the night sky is filled with 1,000 glittering stars. Now, we travel back to a time of gods and monsters, of heroes and magic. We will follow the greatest traveler of them all, Odysseus, the king of Ithaca. He was a man known not just for his strength, but for his brilliant mind. But even the cleverest man can lose his way when the gods intervene. This is not a story of war, though it begins after one. It is a story of longing, of a man who simply wanted to return to his wife, Penelope, and his son, Telemachus. So, relax your shoulders, let go of the day's worries, and let us sail with Odysseus upon the wine-dark sea. The great war at Troy was finally over. 10 long years of fighting had come to an end. The city had fallen thanks to the clever wooden horse devised by Odysseus. Now, the beaches of Troy, once filled with the clash of bronze and the shouts of warriors, were quiet. Odysseus stood on the deck of his black ship, looking out at the horizon. The wind tugged at his cloak, as if whispering, "Home, it is time to go home." His heart ached with missing his island Ithaca. He missed the rugged mountains, the olive groves, and the face of his beloved queen. "Hoist the sails!" Odysseus commanded, his voice steady and calm. His men, tired but hopeful, pulled the ropes. The great white sails caught the breeze, snapping full and tight. 12 ships, filled with treasures and weary soldiers, pushed away from the shore. The prow of Odysseus's ship cut through the water, leaving a trail of white foam behind. They believed the hard part was over. They believed they would be home in a few weeks. They did not know that the gods had other plans. They did not know that the sea is wide and full of mysteries that sleep beneath the waves. For days the ship sailed smoothly under the benevolent sun, but the ocean is a fickle friend. A storm blew them off course, drifting them across unknown waters until they spotted a strange, peaceful coastline. "We need fresh water," Odysseus said. He sent 3 of his men to explore the land. This was the land of the lotus eaters. The people there were not violent. They were gentle, dreamy, and moved slowly, as if walking through honey. They did not carry swords. Instead, they carried flowers. Beautiful, sweet-smelling lotus flowers. When Odysseus's men met the locals, they were offered these flowers to eat. The fruit of the lotus was sweeter than honey, softer than a ripe peach, but it carried a dangerous magic. As soon as the men took a bite, their memories began to fade. They forgot about the war. They forgot about their ships. Most terrifying of all, they forgot about their homes. They sat down on the soft grass, smiling blankly, wanting nothing more than to stay there forever and eat the lotus. Odysseus waited, but his men did not return. Concerned, he went ashore himself. He found them lying under the trees, eyes half closed. "Come," Odysseus said gently, shaking them. "We must go home." "Home?" one man mumbled. "Why, it is nice here. The flowers are sweet." Odysseus realized the danger. This was a trap not of iron bars, but of comfort. He knew that if they stayed, they would lose themselves forever. Using his great strength, he dragged his weeping men back to the ships and tied them to the benches until the effects wore off. "Row," he ordered. "Row for your lives before we all forget who we are." Escaping the sleepy land of the lotus eaters, the fleet sailed on into the mist. The air grew heavy and damp. The sea turned a darker shade of gray. Soon, a new island loomed out of the fog. It was a wild place. There were no plowed fields, no orderly gardens, just massive cliffs and wild forests. This was the land of the Cyclopes. The Cyclopes were not like men. They were giants, tall as trees with mountains of muscle. And in the center of their foreheads, they had only one large round eye. They lived alone in caves high up in the mountains, ignoring the laws of hospitality. Odysseus, ever curious and perhaps a bit reckless, wanted to see who lived on this island. "Wait here with the rest of the fleet," he told his captains. "I will take my own ship and 12 of my bravest men to explore." They landed on a rocky beach. The air smelled of sheep and goats. Climbing a steep path, they found a massive cave. The entrance was high enough for a giant to walk through without stooping. Inside, they found baskets of cheese as big as boulders and bowls of milk the size of bathtubs. "Let us take some cheese and leave," his men whispered, trembling. "This place feels wrong." But Odysseus shook his head. "No," he said, his voice echoing softly in the cavern. "We are guests. We will wait for the owner of this cave and ask for a gift of hospitality." It was a mistake. a mistake that would cost them dearly. For as the sun began to set, the ground shook. Thump, thump, thump. The master of the cave was returning home. The ground trembled again, and a shadow fell over the cave entrance. The men scattered into the darker corners, holding their breath. In stepped the Cyclops, Polyphemus. He was a monstrous figure, shaped like a man but built like a mountain. He drove his flock of fat, woolly sheep into the cavern for the night. With a grunt that shook the dust from the ceiling, the giant lifted a massive slab of stone. It was a rock so heavy that 22 wagons could not have moved it. With a loud thud, he sealed the entrance. They were trapped. Polyphemus then sat down to milk his ewes. It was only when he lit a fire, casting long, dancing shadows against the walls, that his single, great eye noticed the intruders. "Strangers!" His voice boomed like thunder. "Who are you? Are you merchants or pirates?" Odysseus stepped forward, hiding his fear behind a mask of calm. "We are Greeks, returning from Troy. We have lost our way. We ask only for the hospitality due to guests, in the name of Zeus." But the Cyclops had no love for Zeus. He laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "You are a fool, little man," he sneered. "We Cyclopes do not care for gods." That night was a nightmare woven into reality. The giant did not offer them bread or wine. Instead, he snatched up 2 of Odysseus's men and ate them, ignoring their cries. The rest of the men wept in terror, huddled in the shadows. When the giant finally fell asleep, his snoring echoed like a storm in the cave. Odysseus drew his sword, creeping toward the monster's chest. But then he stopped. "If I kill him now," he thought, "who will move the stone door? We will perish in this tomb along with him." He sheathed his sword. Intelligence, not strength, would be their only way out. Odysseus waited for the dawn, his mind racing, weaving a plan as intricate as a spider's web. The next day, the giant went out to tend his flock, leaving the men trapped inside once again. Alone in the cave, Odysseus found a large olive wood stake. He and his men sharpened the tip to a fine point and hardened it in the fire, hiding it under a pile of dung. When evening came and the giant returned, Odysseus made his move. He approached the monster with a bowl filled with dark, potent wine he had brought from the ship. "Cyclops," Odysseus said softly, "try this wine. It is a drink fit for the gods." Polyphemus took the bowl and drank it in one gulp. He smacked his lips. The wine was strong and sweet, far better than his sour milk. "Give me more," the giant demanded. "And tell me your name, little man. I will give you a gift." Odysseus poured him another bowl and then another. The giant's speech became slurred. He swayed where he sat, the warmth of the wine lulling him into a deep stupor. "You ask my name?" Odysseus said. My name is Nobody. My mother, my father, and all my friends call me Nobody. Well then, Nobody, the giant grunted, his head falling back. My gift to you is this. I will eat nobody last. Everyone else I will eat first. With that cruel promise, Polyphemus collapsed onto his back. The wine had done its work. He fell into a heavy, drunken sleep. Now, whispered Odysseus. He and 4 of his strongest men retrieved the sharpened olive stake. They thrust the tip into the glowing embers of the fire until it glowed red hot. Taking a deep breath, they lifted the heavy wood and drove it straight into the giant's single eye. Polyphemus let out a howl that pierced the night. He yanked the stake out. Stumbling around the cave blindly, his arms flailing. "Brothers, help me!" he screamed to the other Cyclopes living in nearby caves. From outside, the booming voices of other giants answered. "What is wrong, Polyphemus? Who is hurting you?" "Nobody," Polyphemus roared back in pain. "Nobody is killing me by treachery." "Well," the other giants replied, sounding annoyed, "if nobody is hurting you, then you must be sick." And they went back to bed. Odysseus smiled in the dark, but they were still trapped. When morning came, the blind giant rolled away the stone to let his sheep out to pasture. He sat by the entrance, feeling the back of every sheep to make sure no men were escaping. But Odysseus was cunning. He tied the sheep together in groups of 3. Under the belly of the middle sheep, a man was tied, hidden by the thick, woolly fleece. Odysseus himself grabbed the largest ram, curling underneath its shaggy belly, holding on tight to the wool. As the ram passed, Polyphemus stroked its back. "My dear ram," the giant mourned, "why are you last today? You are usually the first." He did not check underneath. One by one, the sheep trotted out into the sunlight, carrying the men to freedom. They ran to their ships, driving the giant sheep aboard. As they pushed off from the shore, the relief was overwhelming. The sea breeze felt like a kiss of life. But as the ship moved further away, pride swelled in Odysseus's chest. He could not bear to let the giant think he had been defeated by a nobody. "Cyclops!" Odysseus shouted across the water, his voice full of arrogance. "If anyone asks who blinded you, tell them it was Odysseus, the son of Laertes, king of Ithaca." Hearing this, Polyphemus realized his enemy had escaped. In a blind rage, he tore the top off a hill and threw it toward the sound of the voice. The massive rock splashed into the sea just behind the ship. The wave pushing them further out. But there was one fatal truth Odysseus had missed. He did not know that the monster he had blinded was the son of the sea god. Hear me, Poseidon, god of the sea. If I am truly your son, grant me this wish. Let Odysseus never reach his home, or if he is destined to return, let him come late in a bad ship, having lost all his comrades, and let him find trouble in his house. Far beneath the waves, Poseidon heard his son's prayer. The sea turned a darker, angry blue. The winds shifted. The journey home, which should have taken weeks, would now take 10 long years. Sailing away from the nightmare of the Cyclops, the single surviving ship traveled across the open sea. Soon, a wondrous sight appeared on the horizon. "Captain," a sailor called out, pointing a trembling finger, "look at the water. It shimmers like gold." They approached a floating island surrounded by an unbreakable wall of bronze. This was Aeolia. The king of winds, Aeolus, welcomed them not as strangers, but as honored guests. "Come, sit," King Aeolus said, his voice as changing and melodic as a breeze. "Tell me of the great war. Tell me of the wooden horse." For a whole month they feasted. "You have suffered much," the king said warmly, pouring wine into Odysseus's cup. "Rest here. My island is safe from the storms." When the time came to leave, King Aeolus led Odysseus to the docks. He held out a large bag made from the hide of an ox. It pulsed and moved as if something alive was inside. "Odysseus, my friend," Aeolus whispered, leaning close, "I give you this gift to speed your journey." He tied the bag to the ship's deck with a silver string. "Inside, I have captured the roaring north wind, the humid south wind, and the biting east wind. They will sleep in this bag." The king pointed to the sails. "I have left only the gentle west wind free. It will carry you straight to Ithaca. But listen to me closely. Do not open this bag. Keep it closed until you step onto your own soil." "I promise," Odysseus vowed, his heart full of hope. "I will guard it with my life." For 9 days and 9 nights, the ship cut through the water like a white bird. The west wind hummed a lullaby behind them. Odysseus did not sleep. He stood at the helm, his hand gripping the wooden steering oar, his eyes red with exhaustion, but wide with anticipation. On the 10th day, he leaned over the rail. The mist cleared. "Do you see it?" he whispered to himself. There, rising from the blue sea, were the familiar cliffs of Ithaca. From the deck, he could see the smoke rising from the chimneys of his own people. He could see the green olive groves he used to walk through. He could almost smell the roasting meat from the shore and hear the dogs barking. "We are here," he murmured, tears streaming down his face. "Penelope, I am almost there." Overcome by relief, his knees gave way. He curled up on the hard wooden deck, the steering oar still in his hand, and finally he slept. The ship was silent, gliding toward the shore. But the crew gathered at the bow, eyeing the ox-hide bag. "Look at him," one sailor whispered, glancing at the sleeping Odysseus. "He sleeps while we work." "And look at that bag," another muttered bitterly. "King Aeolus surely gave him gold and silver, tons of it." "It isn't fair," a third man grumbled. "We fought the same war. We rode the same seas. Why should he keep all the treasure for himself?" "Let's just take a little peek." Driven by jealousy, a sailor reached out. His fingers tugged at the silver string. "Just a quick look," he said. The knot slipped loose. Whoosh! It wasn't gold that came out, it was chaos. The winds roared out like released beasts. The ship, which was only minutes away from the harbor, was spun around violently. The sails snapped. The gentle west wind was swallowed by the storm. Odysseus woke to the screaming of the wind. He crawled to the rail and watched in horror as the fires of Ithaca became smaller and smaller, fading into the distance as they were blown back into the endless sea. The storm dragged them all the way back to Aeolia. Wet and shivering, Odysseus climbed the steps to the palace again. "King Aeolus," he begged, falling to his knees, "a foolish mistake. Help us one more time." But the king stood up, his face dark and cold. "You are back?" Aeolus said, stepping away. "I gave you a clear path, and you squandered it. Leave my island." "Please," Odysseus cried. "Begone," the king commanded. "A man so unlucky must be hated by the gods. I cannot help you fight against heaven." Cast out, the men returned to their ship. There was no wind to help them now. They took their heavy oars and began to row, their tears mixing with the salt of the sea. Exhausted, they arrived at a strange harbor surrounded by steep cliffs. The water was eerily calm. "It looks quiet," Odysseus said, narrowing his eyes. "Too quiet. I will tie my ship here outside the harbor just in case." He sent 3 men to scout. They met a young girl drawing water. "Who is the king of this land?" the men asked. She pointed to a high hall. "My father, Antiphates." But when they entered the hall, they did not find a king. They found a giantess, as tall as a mountain peak. She called to her husband, and suddenly the cliffs came alive. Thousands of giants, the Laestrygonians, appeared on the ridges. "Run!" the scout screamed. But it was too late for the ships inside the harbor. The giants threw boulders like pebbles, smashing the fleet. Only Odysseus, who had wisely parked outside, managed to cut his ropes. "Row!" he shouted, his voice breaking with grief. "Don't look back, just row." The surviving ship drifted silently to the shores of a new island, Aea. It was a place of strange, heavy beauty. The trees were tall and dark, and a mysterious purple mist hung in the air. "We need to know who lives here," Odysseus said. He sent a group led by Eurylochus to explore. Deep in the forest, they found a clearing. There stood a palace made of smooth, polished stone. But the most unsettling thing was the garden. Wolves and lions roamed freely, but instead of attacking, they approached the men and rubbed against their legs, purring like house cats. "These beasts," Eurylochus whispered, shivering. "They have the eyes of men, sad human eyes." From inside the palace, a voice drifted out. It was singing a melody so sweet and hypnotic that the men forgot their fear. It was Circe, the daughter of the sun god. She was a sorceress of immense power, living alone in this timeless forest. Through the window, they saw her. She sat at a great loom, weaving a fabric that shimmered like water. Her hair was like spun gold, and her eyes held the ancient cold wisdom of an immortal. "Come in," Circe called out, her voice like a bell. "Do not be afraid." Enchanted by her beauty, the men entered. Only Eurylochus, sensing a trap, hid outside. Circe smiled, but her smile did not reach her eyes. To her, these men were just noisy intruders. For centuries, sailors had come to her island, bringing greed and violence. She had grown tired of their roughness. So she decided to turn them into something that suited their true nature: greedy, noisy animals. To her, this was not cruelty. It was simply keeping order in her garden. "Drink," she said softly, offering them cups of wine mixed with cheese and honey. The hungry men drank greedily, forgetting their manners. As they finished, Circe stood up. The air around her crackled with magic. She raised a thin, golden wand. "You eat like pigs," she said coldly. "So you shall be pigs." She tapped them on their heads. Poof! Their skin turned pink and bristly. Their noses flattened into wet snouts. Their hands became hooves. In an instant, the brave soldiers were turned into swine. They grunted and squealed, terrified, but their minds remained human, trapped inside beastly bodies. Circe laughed, a sound like breaking glass, and herded them into a sty. "Now my island will be quiet again," she whispered. Eurylochus ran back to the ship, weeping as he told the story. "I must go," Odysseus said, grabbing his sword. "I cannot leave them." He walked alone into the dangerous woods. Suddenly, a young man with winged sandals appeared in a shimmer of light. It was Hermes, the messenger of the gods. Hermes was the protector of travelers and thieves, and he had always favored Odysseus for his cleverness and wit. He could not watch his favorite hero fall into a witch's trap. "Stop, Odysseus," Hermes said, his voice light and mischievous. "Where are you going? To the house of the witch? You cannot defeat her magic with a sword. She will turn you into a pig before you can even draw your blade." Hermes bent down and plucked a small, strange plant from the earth. It had a black root and a milk-white flower. "This is moly," Hermes explained. "It is a sacred herb that only gods can dig up. Eat this. It will shield your mind from her magic." Armed with the herb, Odysseus arrived at the palace. Circe, expecting another easy victim, offered him the drugged cup. "Drink," she commanded. Odysseus drank. Circe struck him with her wand. "Change!" she cried. But nothing happened. The white flower protected him. Odysseus stood tall, unchanged. "What?" Circe gasped, her eyes wide with shock. "No mortal has ever resisted me." Odysseus drew his sword and rushed at her. "Restore my men," he demanded, "or you will face the anger of the gods." Realizing this man was protected by higher powers, Circe surrendered. She lowered her wand. "You must be Odysseus," she said, looking at him with new respect. "Hermes told me you would come one day." She went to the sty and waved her wand. The pigs stood up, their bristles falling away. They became men again. Younger, taller, and more handsome than before. The curse was broken. Circe no longer an enemy, but a lonely goddess who finally found an equal, offered them her hand in peace. "Forgive me," she said gently. "Put down your swords. Tonight you are not intruders. You are my guests." The night has grown deep, travelers. The fire in the hearth is burning low. Let us pause our journey here for tonight. Even the greatest heroes need to rest their weary heads. Do not worry about what happens next. I will keep the rest of the story safe for you, right here in my study. So, fall into a deep sleep now. Tuck this story away, safe and deep within your heart. Come back tomorrow night. I will be waiting for you by the fire. Sleep tight. Good night.